Good morning, everybody. I have decided not to move where I'm going to do my read aloud today. I don't know why, but since I started reading this book yesterday, I've been trying to say the word moo a lot more frequently. I think it's hilarious. My wife, not so much. But we have Diego, who doesn't seem to want to move from his spot either. We've got our otter, a couple of colorful lizards, and our tiger blanket to keep us safe, just in case. Nice fresh cup of coffee. I wonder if anything would taste different if I put something other than coffee in here. I don't know. Maybe I'll try that one day. All right, let's pick up where we left off. Okay, we left off on a chapter called Harbor Town. It was the beginning of summer, and we thought we'd landed on another planet, a boat bobbing. Sea salty harbor town, with people strolling the docks, eating ice cream and lobster rolls. Gentle mountains rose up opposite of the harbor and curled around it, wrapping the town in their blue-green embrace. How exactly did we get here? Luke asked. He drew towering mountains and steep cliffs above jagged rocks and tiny, fragile boats bobbing in the ocean below. We made our way to the place my parents had rented, a small old house, with a wood stove inside and an apple tree outside, and a chipmunk on the doorstep, and a chickadee nest, and a lilac tree, and spiders in the woodpile. The same day our parents said, "Go on, ride your bikes, check out the town. We've got unpacking to do. Go, go." What? We said. By ourselves? In the city, where we used to live, there were few safe places for us to ride, few places where we weren't competing with cars and trucks and buses, and surprise clumps of kids armed with sticks and stones or wobbly bearded men spitting. But here in this little town by the sea, there were wide sidewalks and quiet curving lanes spreading like tree limbs from the trunk of the town center, and you could ride and ride the whole day long. We rode down streets and trails discovering our new town. Its people and dogs and old houses, its winding lanes and gnarled trees. The day we passed a farm, and Luke shouted, "Oreo cows!" Black and white cows, black in front and back, with a wide white fur belt, munched at the grass. A girl about my age in rubber boots stood near us, on the other side of the fence. "Belted Galloways, they're called," she said, "or just Belties for short. Purty, right?" A cow. Maybe I had imagined a cow was like a large lamb, soft, furry, gentle, uttering sweet sounds. Get it? Uttering? Because they have udders? No? Okay. But oh, not so, not so. One of the belted Galloways lumbered up to the fence and pushed its enormous head with its enormous nose towards us and uttered a deep, deep, loud moo. So loud and deep as if it were coming from low down in the ground and traveling up through the cow's legs and body and head and out of that enormous, slobbery mouth. Moo. So loud and surprising that we jumped back, and the girl in the rubber boots gave us a pitying look as if she was thinking, "Silly tourists." And I wanted to say, no, we're not tourists. We live here now. More cows ambled up to the fence, nudging their enormous heads and noses between the wires of the fence and bellowing the deepest, loudest moos. And again, I love how she writes and she takes up space on the page. When she says things like enormous, the print gets much bigger. And when things like the word jump appear, she jumps spaces so the word isn't tight like every other word. It's very interesting to read. Luke's hands were pressed tight against his ears. Flies dipped here, there, and amid the smell of cow dung. The farm. Out riding around on our bikes, Luke and I passed that farm nearly every day. On the gate was a blue and white sign, Birchmere Farm. I'd never been to a farm before. I'd never been to a farm before our move to Maine, and I wasn't sure what I thought of this one at first. On sunny days, it looked inviting, with its green pastures and its barns and cows dotting the hillside, gathering in pens. On the first rainy day, though, when Luke and I stopped by the fence, it looked muddy and sloppy and smelled of sawdust and manure. Flies dogged and the animals, well, flies dogged the animals and the stalls. Oh, I get it, because flies are everywhere. Up close, the cows were thick and wide, with heads as big as kegs, and black eyes the size of oranges, and wide, sweating nostrils. And they let out loud, low moos. They scared me, to tell the truth. A rotating group of teenagers showed up each day to work with the animals. Only a few adults were around, driving tractors or trucks. We watched the teenagers fill feed bins and water buckets and climb fences and tromp through sawdust and lean against cows. Luke often sat on the grass and drew. His heroes now took on the look of farmers, brandishing halters and conquering giant cow-like creatures. The house on Twitch Street. Just before you reached the farm, at the far edge of town, at the end of Twitch Street, was a tall, narrow house that tilted to one side. Thick, twisted vines crept up the side of the gray house, around doors and windows to the chimney top. The attic window was cracked and open, and from within you could hear the sound of a flute, high and light and gentle. Miss Falala lived in that house. Fa-la-la is how you say her name. Most people agreed she had a cow and a pig, but some said she also had a goat and an alligator and a bear. Some people said not to bother Miss Falala because she was old. Others said not to bother her because she made weird things happen. One day, our father took Luke and me to Mrs. Falala's house. Be respectful, my father said. No matter what you hear or see, be respectful to Mrs. Falala. It is kind of a fun word to say. I feel like I'm about to start singing. An enormous golden cat fell straight down from a tree overhead, landing at our feet. The cat reared back on its hind legs and bared its teeth and claws, and out of its mouth came a menacing hiss. Our father ushered us up the sidewalk. Pay no attention, he said, it's just a cat. A fat, black hog lurched into view from behind the house and raced toward the cat, squealing all the while, the most unappealing squeal. Pay no attention, our father said, urging us toward the front door. High above, from the open attic window, floated the delicate melody of a flute, while behind us the hog chased the cat round and round the yard, and a bright green parrot perched on top of the porch squawked at us as we climbed the steps to the door trimmed in vines. A sign on the door read, "Wrong door, go to back." And so, dodging the hog and the cat under the watchful eyes of the bright green squawking parrot, we obeyed. A sign on the back door read, "Who are you?" We looked at each other, and me and my father and Luke. Luke said, "No way, not going in there. She'll probably chop us to pieces." My father said, "Be respectful," and he knocked. Around the corner, the hog squealed and cat hissed. A face appeared at the window beside the door, a pale, thin, old, wrinkled face. The hog knocked Luke over, and the cat jumped on the hog's back. And as my father and I battled the hog and the cat, the door opened. A long, pale, thin, old, wrinkled arm reached out and pulled my brother inside, and my father and I tumbled in after him. Inside. At the end of the long, thin arm was Mrs. Falala, clutching Luke and kicking the door shut. "You ease living?" she asked. Her voice was unexpected, full of honey. "Ease you?" My father stepped forward. Yes, we are, living, yes." He handed her 2 books. "From my wife," he said. "She asked me to bring them to you. You met her, apparently, at the doctor's?" Mrs. Falala closed one eye. "And where is she, this wife?" "Why she not bring?" "She is living, yes?" Yes, she had an appointment today, but living, yes, most certainly." Mrs. Falala studied the covers of the books. Down her back trailed a long white braid, which she flicked like a horse's tail. "Wrong books," she said. "Wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong." She pushed the books back to my father. She turned to me and Luke. "And you, who are you, and you?" When we told her our names, she tapped on my forehead. He's peculiar. No? This name, Rena? Mrs. Falala caught me trying to peer around her into the room beyond. She kicked that door closed. He's nothing there. No going in there. I glanced at the ceiling, straining to hear the sounds of the flute, but there was silence. What you ees looking at? Shoo shoo, nothing here. Goodbye now. Go home. As we left the house of Mrs. Falala, seagulls, white and gray, arrived one by one, and perched on the ridge atop of her house. Not just a few, first 10, then 20, then 30 or more, until they were lined up wing to wing, a row of feathered soldiers guarding her house, and the flute music, high and light, floated from the attic window. On Luke's arm, where Mrs. Falala had held him, was a pale blue mark in the shape of a leaf, and in the sky 2 white clouds joined to form a flying girl, long white hair trailing behind. The hog and the cat and parrot were gone. I listened for them. What I heard was the faintest moo. Moo. Don't you touch me. That's the chapter. Luke was not fond of animals. He kept his distance, much as he did with people. His first spoken sentence was, Don't you touch me. He said it to a lady in the post office, who then looked offended. I won't hurt you, cutie pie, the woman said. Don't you touch me. My mother offered a weak, apologetic smile. Luke said it to a grocery clerk, and an elderly man on the sidewalk, and the doctor. Don't you touch me. He pointed his fingers in warning. My mother reasoned that Luke just did not like people getting in his face, pinching his cheeks, squeezing his chubby arms, and telling him how cute he was. Don't you touch me. Now that he was older, he rarely said, Don't you touch me. More often, if someone was swooping in too close, he'd scowl or run off or say something silly like, Nuttohead or Frog Brain. Funny little kid, people would say. When Mrs. Falala had snagged Luke's arm and pulled him inside, his reaction said it all. Wild, wide-opened eyes, stiff arms and legs, fingers clenched like claws. Luke wrenched himself away from Mrs. Falala with the practiced skill of an escape artist. I know he wanted to say, Don't you touch me, but he didn't. That night, in his yellow notebook, Luke's drawing included a skeletal towering figure with a snake braid and sharp metal claws, surrounded by a posse of enormous hogs and menacing cats. And that brings us to a chapter called Beat and Zep. I think we're going to have to wait until tomorrow to meet those characters, or at least assume that they're characters. Trying to read ahead, I think they're characters, but we'll find out tomorrow. Very fascinating story, interesting writing, fun characters. I like this. I hope you're enjoying it too. I'll see you tomorrow.